Hey guys, welcome back to another Unreal Engine 4 tutorial. In today's video, I'm showing you how to create a grappling hook system in your game. So in this, we're going to be able to shoot a grappling hook gun. Wherever it lands, it will take the player to that location as well. So let me show you what it's going to look like now. So once we get in, you can see we can walk around. If we press the left mouse button, it's going to shoot. It will take us over there, and then we'll fall like so after we've got there. We shoot again, it's going to take us all the way over there, and once we get there, we'll drop down like so. And you can see it actually shoots a little grappling hook as well in the direction that we're firing in. And when we shoot, we can't shoot multiple ones off at the same time. We can only do that once we get there and collect this up again. And you can see if we're halfway through and we press right mouse button, it's going to stop us as well. So we can cancel this like so as well. So we're going to create this today. So let me delete this code and I'll show you how we've done this. And again, at the very end, I press right mouse button, which is why we failed before. So our first step is going to be to import this grappling hook that we're going to use. So for me, I put that in content grapple hook here, and it is simply just this little model here. Now it's very small by default, so we'll scale it up later, but we're going to be using this model here. I'll leave a download link to this in the description down below. So we close that, that's what we're using. The next step is we want to open up our first person projectile, or basically just the bullet, the projectile for your grappling hook. So for me, that's in first person BP, blueprints, first person projectile, or what you can do is just simply right click, go blueprint class and get an actor. And what I think I'll do in actual fact is I will create it from start, just so that even if you're not using the first person project, you know how to do this as well. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to get a blueprint class, I'm going to get an actor like so. And I'm just going to name this one grapple hook BP like so, and open it up straight away. In here, what we want to do is we want to add a component, we want to add a static mesh like so. I'm just going to name this one grapple or hook, whatever you want to name it. I'm just going to change the static mesh to be our grapple hook here. So mine's called grappling hook like that. And I'm going to scale this up by 15 so we have something about this size. You can make this whatever size you want, but this is what I found to be good when I was making this code earlier. What we also want to do is we want to rotate this by -90 on the Y like so, so that when we spawn it, it's going to be facing forwards. So it's like we've shot it out of the gun. Next, what we want to do is we want to deselect that, add a component, and we want to add a box collision, and this is obviously going to be the collision for our grappling hook. So we just want to scale this accordingly so it fits perfectly around our grappling hook, like so. So I think something along these lines is quite good, so we don't need to change it too much, just make it a little bit skinnier, and I think that's a good size. Again, customize this to get it perfect for you. What we want to do next is we want to just simply make this box collision the default scene route. So we're just going to drag and drop that on default scene route there to make it the new route, and then that works perfectly like so. So the collision is the route, which is good practice for any projectile that you make. Then we just want to mess about with some of the collision settings for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down on the right until we find collision. We're going to leave simulate generate hit events false, leave generate overlap events true, can character step upon yes, collision presets we're going to change to be custom, and then we're going to change the object type to be projectile like so. And all we want to do is we want to change some of these. I'll just either say block, overlap, ignore. I'll be going down the list like so. Starting with visibility. We've got block, 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 ignore, block, 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 block. So basically all of them are block apart from pawn, which is ignore. Like so. And now this should work perfectly for us. We compile and save that. Now we can go over to the event graph and start setting up some of this code. So what we want to do is we want to delete these 3 events here. And instead we want to right click and get event hit like so. And so this is going to fire off when this grappling hook lands or when it hits something. So after this, what we want to do is we want to come off of that and we want to cast to our character, which for me is the first person character, but for you this could be third, first, or whatever you've named it. The object is obviously going to be get player character like so. What we want to do is then open up our first person character and create some variables. So let's do that now. So let's minimize this and just open up first person character there. In here, like I say, I'm going to create some variables. So I'm going to hit the plus variable there. I'm going to name this one grapple start lock like that, which basically means the starting location for our grappling hook. So you can name that whatever you like to make it make more sense for you. So starting location, anything like that, but grapple start lock makes sense for me. I'm going to change that from a boolean to a vector like so, so it's a location. I'm going to hit plus variable again. Again, this is a location, so we can keep it as vector. I'm going to name this one grapple end lock. So we're having the start and end locations for the grappling hook. Then we compile, save that, and we can go back to our projectile for our grapple hook here, as we can then now access this. So we've come out of as first person character, we can set grapple hook or grapple start lock, plugging that into there like so. And the start of it just wants to be where the player is now. So we're going to come out of as first person character, get actor location like so, plugging a return value into there like that. We'll come out of as third person character again, and we'll set grapple end lock, and this one is just going to be the location off of this event here. So we're going to get hit location, plugging that in there, which basically means wherever the grapple hook ended, wherever it hit, wherever it collided, that is where we want to go to. So we're going to use that there. I'm just going to double click on these to get some root nodes to keep it looking nice and neat and tidy and organized. So I think that looks good like so, and then we'll come back into this code later to finish it off. So we're going to compile, save, and go back to our first person character. In here, what we want to do is we want to find our spawn projectile code that we have here. Or if you don't have this, what you can do instead is just get this fire or left mouse button, come out of that, go into a spawn actor from class. In your spawn actor from class, you want to set the class as the grappling hook projectile we just made. So this is if you have this code as well. What we're going to do is change this to be our grapple hook BP there like so. Compile that, and I'm also just going to disconnect this placeout location, but you can keep that on if you want, if you'd like a sound, but I personally don't. So we're going to get rid of that like so. Then we're going to go back to the start of this where we have the input action fire, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down B and left click to get a branch, plugging that in there like so. So when it comes out of the fire, it's going to go into the branch. The condition of this branch is going to be a new boolean we're going to make, so hit the plus variable there, and I'm going to call this one is grappling question mark like so. I'm going to change it from a vector to a boolean, so it's a true or false value, and that's going to go into the condition there like that. The false of this will then set is grappling to be true, and that is going to go into this play montage there, or just for you, the spawn actor. So the only reason I've gone this montage play here is just so it then plays the animation for firing a gun as well. And true, we don't want to do anything, as if we are grappling, we don't want to grapple again. Now this system does work for that, but I feel like it's just more realistic if we don't. So I think that's good for me like so. The next step we want to take is we want to make sure that this is always going to be facing forwards. So no matter which direction we're facing when we shoot this grappling hook, it will always face forwards as if it's just been shot out of the gun. So let's do that now. So what we're going to do is we're going to come out of the return value of this spawn actor here, and we're going to set actor rotation like so. The execution should go in there like that. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to right click new rotation and split the structure pin. And then I'm going to drag and drop a reference to our capsule component up here. And out of that, I'm going to get world rotation, so the rotation of our player. I'm going to right click that return value and split the structure pin as well. And the Z is going to simply go into the Z of the new rotation like so. So it's going to get the direction the player is facing and set that to be the direction the grappling hook should face as well. So now this should work like that as well. So let me actually comment some of this code as well. So I'll select that, hit C to comment it, and I'll call this one grapple hook always faces forwards like so. And what we can do now is we can start setting up to actually move the player on this grapple hook. So we'll come down underneath this code, right click and get a custom event. So add custom event like so. I'm just going to call this one move grapple or move player or fire grapple, anything along those lines which makes sense to you. But for me, I want move grapple. Under this, I'm going to get the grapple end location. So get grapple end lock there, and then get grapple start lock underneath it as well. So get grapple end, get grapple start, like so. Out of the end, I'm going to get a vector minus a vector, plugging the bottom value as the start. And then out of that, we're going to get a vector length. So what we're doing is we're just basically getting the distance between the player and where the grapple landed, so where they want to go. So what we're doing is we're basically getting the distance between the end of the grapple, so where it landed, and where the player is currently. So essentially, finding the distance in which the player needs to travel. Out of this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a float divided by a float. We're going to use a value which I found earlier while creating this code, which was 1200. I'll tell you why we're doing that in a second. Out of this, we're going to go into a clamp, the clamp float, with the minimum as 1, maximum as 5. So now what we're doing is we're doing this to set the length of how long it should take the player to travel along the grappling hook. So the vector length will probably be something like 500, 2000, anything like that. We're going to divide it by 1200 to get what we want, which is either 1 or 5. And this is basically the time in seconds that it should take for the player to travel. So we're dividing it by 1200, so it goes from a very big number down to a much smaller number. And the minimum is 1, maximum is 5, because I want it to take the player a minimum of a second to travel and a maximum of 5 seconds. Now you don't need to do this clamp, you can just put it straight in if you want, but I just want it to be like this so it doesn't take too long and it's not too quick. So again, this is finding the length in seconds for how long it should take the player to travel. Off of this return value, we're going to get another float divided by a float, except this is going to go into the bottom value and the top value will be 1. So we're going to get 1 divided by this value here of the time in seconds. And why we're doing this is so we can then change the actual length for how long it should take. So this is finding out the length, this is changing the length. So what we need to do now is we need to right click and add a timeline. So we're going to be using a timeline to move the player. So add timeline like so, and I'll name this one move grapple TL for timeline like so. I won't connect that to anything just yet, but I'll double click on it to open it up. The length we want to set to 1, and make sure you set it as 1, as this is how we're going to be changing the time later on, as it needs to be 1 for it to work. I'm going to add a float track, and I'll just call this one grapple track. You can name this absolutely whatever you like. In here I'm going to right click and add a key to curve float, time 0, value also 0. Right click, add another keyframe, time 1, value 1. So it goes from the very beginning to the very end of the code. Compile, and we can close that timeline like so. Just before this, what we want to do is we want to open the components tab on the left here to drag in our timeline like so. So move grapple TL get like that. So that's a reference to our timeline. And out of this, what we want to do is we want to set the play rate like so, plugging that into play from start on the timeline, and the start of this going into the move grapple custom event there. The new rate of this will be the return value from this 1 divided by the value we made earlier. Put that in there like so. So like I say, this is determining how long it should take the player to travel. So I'm going to select all this, hit C to comment it, and I'll call this one set max time for grapple. Min time 1 sec, max 3. So hopefully that makes sense. What we're doing is we're getting the end location and the start location and getting the length of that, so how far the player wants to travel, and then we're going to be getting that in seconds, so the length, but putting it into seconds, so how long we want it to take, and then putting that into something between 0 and 1, and then putting that into a decimal to set the play rate of how fast the timeline should play through it to get that working perfectly for us like so. So then after this, we want to actually move the player. So what we're going to do is out of the update, we're going to set actor location, which is obviously going to move the player. It's going to set their location. I'm going to leave the target itself. We're going to come out of the grapple track there. We're going to get a lerp vector, the return value going to the new location at that set actor location there. A is going to be grapple start lock. B is going to be grapple end lock. So it's going from the start location to the end location. So let's make that end like so. So it's going from the start to end location smoothly with how long it should take, which we're determining there. Off of finished, what we want to do is we want to get a reference to our character movement here. So get character movement, and we want to simply set movement mode. So I'm doing this because I actually forgot to do a step a second ago. So let me just plug that into the finished there. Set movement mode, and we're going to be setting this to walking like so. So we're going back to walking instead of traveling on the grapple hook. So what I want to do just before this timeline here is we move this forward a bit. We want to drag and drop a reference to our character movement again. Come out of that, we want to disable movement like so. Plugging that in there like that, go back into the play from start there. So we're disabling the movement so the player can't move around while they're traveling, as because then that would kind of mess it up. They'll move off course, it will break, and you can't really move on a grapple hook anyway, so that just makes it more realistic. And again, when we finish, we want to set the movement mode back to walking so the player can move around again, and then they start falling once they hit a vertical surface or anything like that. Off of this, we want to set is grappling to false, as we've now obviously stopped grappling. So that should work perfectly, like so. Now what we're going to set up, so actually before I do that, I will select this and hit C to comment it. I'll just comment this one, move player, like so. So now underneath this, we're going to set up hitting the right mouse button to cancel the grapple. So underneath this, I'm going to right click, I'm going to get right mouse button, where you can set up an action mapping for that as well if you like. To do that, it's edit, project settings. Once this loads, go down to input, hit the plus action mapping there, and I'll name this one cancel grapple. You can call this whatever you like. And then I'm going to set this to be right mouse button, like so. And then maybe I'll also set it to be the backspace as well. But again, put this to whatever you like. And the benefit of doing action mappings is, like you see there, we can set up multiple keys, we can set it up for different consoles, and we can also set up key bindings. So once you've done that, we can close that, delete that event there, and now if you right click, we can search for what we just named it. So for me, that was cancel grapple, like so, and you can see we have it there. Off of pressed, what we're going to do is we'll hold down B, left click to get a branch, plug it in there like so, and we're going to get another reference to the character movement. Out of this, we're going to get movement mode, and out of that, we're going to get an equal enum, like so, with that going to the condition of the branch there, and we'll leave that as none. So let's move that up there. And the reason we're doing this is because we only want to be able to cancel the grapple and fire off this code if our movement mode is none. So essentially, we've disabled the movement there. And that will work for us like so. And because I say we only want to do it if that's true, we're going to come off of true, like so. So what we're going to do is get another reference to the timeline. So components, move grapple TL, get that. Out of this, we're going to simply just get stop, like so, plugging that into true. So that will stop the timeline, so it will stop the player from moving. And because we're stopping it, this is why we want play from start, not play. And also because when this ends, we haven't reversed it, so it will stay at the end. So we want play from start. After this, we again want to set the movement mode. So we'll come out the character movement again, and set movement mode like so, plugging that in there, and putting this back as walking like so. So the player is now walking again. And then we also want to again set is grappling to false, as we've stopped grappling like so, and this is all to allow us to re-grapple up here again, like so, to fire it off once again. And then there's one final step, so I'll actually comment this again, so select it, hit C to comment it, and I'll just call this one cancel grapple, like so, compile and save that, and now we go back over to our grapple hook BP here for our projectile. And what we're going to do in here is actually call the event to move our grappling hook. So we created this custom event here, we want to call this. So we'll come out of our set grapple end lock there. So come out the as dab passing character again. I'll come out this rewrite node there. And I'm going to call function move grapple like so, plugging that in there like that. I'll rewrite node that again by double clicking on it. So that is then going to call that function to move the player. But what I want to do now is I also want to run a check to see when the player is at the location, so I can then delete the actor, destroy the actor of this grapple hook BP here, so it then gets rid of it, and so it looks like the player's picked it back up. So it's very simple to do. All we want to do is just hold down D, left click to get a delay, plug that in there like so, and I'll just set this to 0.1 seconds. Off of this, I'm going to hold down B, left click to get a branch, plugging that in there like that. And the condition of this is going to again see what the character's movement is. So we're going to come out of the as dub passing character again and get the character movement. So it should be all the way at the bottom there, get character movement. Out of that, we're going to get movement mode. And then out of that, we're going to get a not equal to enum. So that's an exclamation point and an equals for not equal enum, and leave that as none, plugging that in a condition there. So if the player's movement mode is anything but none, so they have movement enabled, we're going to come off of this. So true, we'll then just go into a simple destroy actor to get rid of it, and false, we'll just go back into this delay here to keep checking it. We can double click that to rewrite node it again to keep it looking neat and tidy. So this is just going to continually loop this to check to see if the player is there or not, and then when it is, it will just delete this code here. Or delete the grapple to make it look like the player's picked it up, and obviously because they finished, the player can then fire it off again. So let's compile, save, and that should be this code done. So I'll give you a quick run through again. So what's going to happen is when the player presses left mouse button to fire, or whatever you have, it's going to see if we're already grappling. If we're not, it will say that we are. Fire off the grapple hook, and make sure it's rotating to face the direction the player's facing. And then once it's fired off, when it hits something, what it's going to do is just set the grapple start location to where the player is currently, send that end location to where the grapple hit, then it's going to move the player. When they're moving, which we'll look into in a second, it's going to continually check to see when they stop moving. When they stop moving, the grapple will get destroyed. To move the player, all we're simply doing is just getting the distance between the player and where they want to go, getting that to seconds to see how long it should take us, and then it's going to move them by setting a location for how long we wanted it to take. Once they're finished, we'll go back to walking, and we'll set is grappling to false, so that we can then do it again. Again, we can also hit right mouse button to cancel this at any time while we are grappling. So let's minimize, and let's hit play to test this to see if it is working for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit left mouse button, And you can see we fired it off, it just stopped straight away, like so. So let's have a look at why that happened. Although, sorry, there's one actually big thing which I missed out, which I forgot about because when I was making the code, I just used the first person projectile. So if I open it up, I just used this here. So one thing I forgot to add is actually add the projectile movement to make this a projectile. So we created all the code for it, but we didn't make it a projectile, so it's going to spawn in, but it's not going to fire off. So let's do that now. Let's see if we can actually just duplicate this over to make it quicker for us. So we go back into the grapple hook BP. We can indeed. So if you don't have this, just simply add component and then get projectile movement there. You can see we have it here now working perfectly like so. And one thing you're also going to make sure that you have is should bounce unticked like so. So now if we hit compile and see if we can test this out once again, hopefully this should now work. So if we try this, we can move around like normal. And if we press left click, the grappling hook is going to fire off. We go over here and then you can see that we're actually stuck on this wall. Now that doesn't happen very often and it doesn't always happen, and you can see it fixed itself there. However, we obviously don't want that. And now after a couple minutes of pulling my hair out trying to figure out why this is happening, because the code is the exact same as when I did it before, nothing is different, but it worked before. After a lot of testing, it doesn't now. So after some debugging, I figured out the problem. So all I need to do is this delay here, I just need to lower that. So instead of 0.1, I'm going to set it to 0.0001, because what it's doing is it's going back out of none for just a fraction of a second. 0.1 of a delay isn't fast enough to detect that. Again, not sure why it's an issue now where it wasn't earlier, but this will now fix that issue. So this is in the grapple hook BP, sorry, we have the delay going in here, this loop, we just need it to be quicker. So if we make that smaller, compile, save, we should now see this working a lot better. So now let's do the proper test again. If I left click, it's going to fire off over there, we go over, and then we fall down. If I fire it all the way over there, and if I hit right mouse button, it's going to cancel, and we'll go back here, and we can fire it off again. Go over here, we'll fall, we fire it off again, as this is now working perfectly for us. We had a slight hiccup earlier, but we managed to resolve that issue fairly quickly, fairly easily. Just took a little bit of debugging on my end, because for some reason something went wrong. Again, not sure why, but it did, but at least we have it fixed now. So I think that'll be it for this video. We've done everything we want to do. We've created this grapple hook in which we can hit left mouse button to fire it off. We will go to the location where it landed and fall like so, and we can use this multiple times. We can only use it once when it's been fired. When we pick it up, we can fire it again, and if we hit right mouse button, it will cancel it and drop us wherever we are when we press it. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, make sure to like and subscribe down below. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.